Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of 903 Sports. I am your host, Cameron Brown, joined by the boys, Mason Cudd, Trent Sansom, and Hunter Shattuck. Another great weekend of sports. The national championship, college football is over, boys. Georgia taking down the Goliath, Alabama, 33-18, winning their first national championship since 1980. We have a man on our podcast that has had a very tough last few days, Alabama graduate and now alumni, Mason Cudd. So, Cudd, I know you've had a tough week. Sorry for your loss, my friend. I will let you have the floor and discuss the game. What happened to the Tide? Will the Tide be back? Let's hear your thoughts.
Well, first of all, yes, I'm still in mourning of this loss. But, looking back at the game, I would say the first and second half were two completely different stories. I mean, in the first half, at the end of the first half, we were up. But I think at the end of the day, what it came down to is we just couldn't finish in the red zone. And I was pretty surprised after we kicked the second field goal that we didn't go for it on 4th and goal the third time before half, especially with Georgia getting the ball coming out of half. 7 would have been big. And sure enough, first possession out of halftime, Georgia goes down and takes the lead. With that free play jump ball, that was a pretty good ball by Stetson Bennett. And man, after that play, you could just feel the momentum completely flip the script on us. And then, before half, losing Jameson Williams killed us. We were already coming into the game without John Mechie. So, that hurt, And, Ja'Cory Brooks, he stepped up big time in that Iron Bowl. But, everyone always says, we got 5 stars waiting on the bench and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I don't care how good you were, to be thrown into the national championship and say pick up the slack for guys like Mechie and Williams, that's tough to pick up right off the bat.
Whole nother ball game.
Yeah, exactly. So that definitely set us back some. And then once that happened, I was pretty pissed with Bill O'Brien because now you just lost a big-time playmaker. I wanted Brian Robinson to get the ball a lot more. Take some of that weight off of Bryce Young so he wasn't trying to just win the game by himself. And that's not what happened at all. We pretty much threw every play. But, yeah. And then pretty much after we just quit running the ball, we were getting in basically 3-and-out situations, 3rd and long. And then, of course, Georgia running the ball well. We lost Phil Mathis, our nose guard. And then ever since that happened, Georgia went from 3 yards a rush to 6 or 7. And then pretty much from there, it was pretty much too far to come back from, and we were done. But, Georgia played a damn good game from start to finish. And you could just tell that they were hungry, especially the way that we embarrassed them in the SEC championship. They were supposed to kill us, and they kind of got a reality check, but they came back with the reality check when it mattered. That's for sure.
Yeah, Bama didn't do the things that they do well. Bama, for the last 20 years of my life, is we're going to establish the run, throw when we need to, and make plays. And, historically, Bama hasn't had these all-time Heisman QBs like Bryce Young who can make those plays. And Bryce played really well. He made a lot of great throws without his top 2 weapons in Jameson Williams and John Mechie. And some guys had to step up. He had a lot of guys drop some passes as well. But Bama never got the run game going, especially in the second half. Like you said, Bill O'Brien just abandoned the run game. He panicked. He really did. When Georgia started to kind of feel like they were really getting closer and closer in this game, it was a close game the whole time, but it felt like Bama always had the nudge. They were always just ahead. And they never got the run game going, and Georgia just kind of hit them in the mouth, and it shocked the Tide, and they just never got anything going. So, Hunter, I'll let you jump in here and thoughts on Bama and the Natty that we saw Monday night.
Yeah, so when I was sitting there at halftime, kind of just thinking about what we just saw in the first half and why there hadn't been a touchdown, and it wasn't for lack of big plays. Both teams had kind of breakout plays to get into, maybe not necessarily the red zone, but deep into opposing territory, and then the drives just kind of stalled. And I think it really just came down to a lack of running the football, which continued for Bama, but it didn't for Georgia. And so I was sitting there thinking that, if one of these two teams could figure out how to dominate the line of scrimmage on offense and get 3 or 4 yards before the running back gets touched, then that's going to gain some momentum and maybe finish off one of these drives, which we saw from Georgia. And, Cud, you're talking about how Bama just abandoned the run, but, when Alabama did kind of gain some momentum there in the middle of the second half, they were almost just running the ball through the passing game with just little dinks and dunks to the receiver or the running back because they couldn't establish that push up front. They couldn't get 2, 3, 4 yards before the backs were getting touched. Georgia was getting such a big push against Alabama to where they really couldn't run the football. So every time they did run, the guy was getting hit in the backfield right at the line of scrimmage. And so it's really hard to stick with that run game whenever you just really can't advance the football at all. You have to rely on individual playmaking, breaking tackles, and you're not breaking tackles against those Georgia defensive linemen. So I'm not going to put it all on the offensive coordinator and the play calling. A lot of it just comes down to losing battles at the line of scrimmage, which is something I never thought I would say about a Nick Saban Alabama team. So I think that would be my take on just kind of how the dynamic played out in Georgia, just kind of outmanned Alabama at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the football, which is crazy to say out loud.
Yeah, that Georgia defense is nasty. If you look at a mock draft, it's filled with Georgia defensive players. There's like 6 or 7 of those guys in there. And you're right, they out-toughed the Bama line, and that's not something you see every day. Bryce Young was under pressure constantly in that game. He had to make some plays for a young kid, and to his credit, he did make his fair share of plays, but his O-line had a tough game, and that's not something you see every day. But Trent, I'll let you jump in. I know you have a pretty good point about Bama not stepping on Georgia's throat when they had the chance in the first half, and Bama kept getting across the 50, and they have to punt at the 50 or settle for a field goal. So I'll let you jump in here.
Yeah, well, that was the biggest takeaway for me is, you can't get inside the 50 that many times and come away with 3 field goals. Another attempted field goal that got blocked, getting stalled out on like 45 to 50, punting the ball, especially against a good defense like Georgia has. But my issue, after thinking about the game, originally, I thought at first Bryce had a really good game. Then I thought about it. I was like, man, he really, going back, he looked like he completed a clip over maybe 50% of his passes. But to me, this all falls on Bill O'Brien. After going back and looking at some of the highlights and listening to some of the talking heads out there talk about it, he didn't do anything to help out his quarterback, who's a redshirt freshman. He is the Heisman, but once you lose both your receivers and you kind of lose the over-the-top game, you've got to establish some sort of run. And yes, they have the best defense because they can outpower and outrun everybody. So you're not going to beat them with power, you're not going to beat them with speed. But the thing is, we have no pre-snap motion at all with Bill O'Brien's offense in that championship game. You look at the difference between a Sarkisian run offense that they had last year, and there was all sorts of motion given. They had different cats. But the point is, the scheme and the plays that were run and the setup of the offense was totally different. And you have to, like, if you're not running the ball at the middle, not running the ball with the tosses and the sweeps, you got to figure out a way to start moving that defense around, keep them on their toes. That way, you're not just running the ball on first down up the gut for a yard or a tackle for a loss. And then you're behind the sticks and you're having to, all of a sudden rely on your quarterback and you don't have your top 2 weapons. I think this was a horribly coached or called offense for Alabama and Bill O'Brien.
Yeah, and Trent, to follow up on that, kind of like you were saying, it's not, and back, I guess to repeat what I was saying, it's not necessarily just hand the ball off and run it up the middle and just hope that it works. You got to get creative to get your playmakers in space around the line of scrimmage, because without your top 2 receivers, you're not going to be able to advance the ball in chunks in the air. That's not going to happen. So you need to get creative, like you're saying, pre-snap, or maybe run some creative screen plays or something to get your playmakers, the ones you have left, with the ball in their hands around the line of scrimmage to at least change up the look a little bit to throw Georgia off, which they didn't do at all. So, you're right about that.
You got to throw some jet motions in there. Motion a guy all across the other side. Have a 2-back offense come out. The thing is the way you're going to beat Georgia, like they did in the national or the SEC championship, was over the top. Like you said, once you lose that, you lose those weapons. Now all of a sudden you got to change the game plan up, and they didn't have an answer at all.
Yeah, the Bama play calling was about as predictable and non-creative as I've ever seen, especially in a big game. Biggest game of the season. You got to pull out all the stops, especially when you lose your top 2 talents. And
yeah, He literally was just handing the ball off up the gut just so he could say, "Well, I'm not giving up on run."
Yeah, it was not Bill O'Brien's best game, and I'm not a big Bill O'Brien fan as it is, but he did not. I agree with what you said, Trent. He did not help his quarterback whatsoever. And a young guy in that big game, that's a huge spot. I don't care if he's the Heisman winner or not. So, Cut, I'll let you have the last thoughts on the game before I ask you my Alabama question here.
Yeah, so like Hunter and Trent were just saying, is like to get quick plays out of the hands of Bryce Young, make Nakobe Dean and company run 20 yards to the sideline, get those big guys gassed, and then that'll open up your big plays over the top one-on-one coverages. And we kind of started out doing that. But then, like we were saying, it's like, well, this is working. Let's try something else. I mean, it kind of confused me there. But yeah, my first point was first half, second half was night and day difference. Play calling, and I mean, it was just the wheels came off basically drive by drive, And then right there, when Georgia got all that momentum, that defense was flying to the ball. Bryce Young threw that pick, trying to get a big play, and it just fell apart on us.
As goofy as Kirby Smart is, I would assume he had the halftime speech of a lifetime because Georgia came out rock and roll in the second half, and credit to him in that. So, Cud, let me ask you, you're not going to like this question, but let me ask you in the most ESPN first take lame question as possible. Is the Alabama dynasty over? Is this it?
No way.
That was a little slower reaction than I was expecting.
Well, for one, the GOAT is going to be coaching the Crimson Tide until 2028.
I hope
so,
not.
In my opinion, you can't even have that conversation until 2029, first of all. Second of all, this team that just lost the championship, we lost a ton of players to the NFL draft, to graduation. Hell, we got like a half of a new coaching staff this year. And when you have that many changes in the roster and in the staff, 9 times out of 10, you're not even supposed to be playing for all the marbles, for one. And then 2, on top of that, if you look at our team this year, we had 3 true freshmen. True seniors, sorry. Now, granted, we had some redshirt seniors that played an extra year. I think I was looking at our team to look at that. I think we had like 8 of those. So altogether, between our true seniors and our redshirt seniors, we lost about 10 guys. And you look at these teams that usually make these runs, they got some big-time leaders in the team. They got a group of 15, 20 seniors that are leading the way, setting the example. And not to say our guys didn't, that were in those positions, but, as far as how many people we had in those positions, it was few. So if you look at the season and how we got here and what we had to get there, I definitely don't think that it is over. Did it take us a little step back? Yes, I agree with that. But I think we're going to be just fine. And Bryce Young is a sophomore. I mean, you're playing for all the marbles your freshman year. I mean, it's hard to complain with that. Yeah.
What's scary for a non-Bama fan like myself who's ready for the Bama dynasty to be over, and for you Bama fans to not be so great every year, know what misery feels like during the regular season to go 6-6, is that Bama's best 2 players are Bryce Young and the Anderson kid on defense, and they're both coming back.
Yep.
And they're both going to get drafted in the top 5 in that draft. So if you're a Bama fan, there's a lot of optimism about that, at that aspect. So I assume that would be your answer, and then unfortunately I agree. Bama's not going anywhere. As long as Nick Saban has a pulse and is on that sideline, Alabama's going to be good. Another great recruiting class for them, so they will unfortunately be back. Keep an eye on that Ohio State team, though, coming in next year. That C.J. Stroud kid's a ball player, so if I'm going to go early predictions for next season, Ohio State and Alabama are going to be on a collision course for each other. Georgia's losing a ton of guys from this ball club. This might be their kind of magical deal like LSU had 2 years ago. Everything just kind of fell in line for them. But go ahead, Trent.
I was just saying we can only hope. I hate Georgia.
Yeah, I do too. It made me sick to see them win I love the Georgia jokes. Hadn't won since 1980, and that gets shoved in my face as a Tennessee fan now that Georgia had their moment. So hate to see that. But Hunter, any thoughts on the Bama dynasty?
Yeah, I mean, it's not over. Like Cud said, as long as Nick Saban is the head coach, they may not win a championship every year, but I mean, they're for sure going to be relevant, and they're for sure going to make the playoff. And so, no, it's not over. However, I do think it's going to look a little different. I was thinking about the 2 times they lost this season. I watched the A&M game pretty closely, and then obviously the championship game, and they got beat at the line of scrimmage in both games. And you again, Saban got hired in 07, 08, and I hadn't seen a Saban team get beat at the line of scrimmage like the 2 games that they lost this season. So I definitely think the identity of his teams have changed, and I think especially if you look at, I think I was talking to Trent this week about the recruiting classes coming in, and they don't have the best recruits coming in around the line of scrimmage this year. And that's kind of been the trend the last couple of years, specifically with offensive defensive line. You got A&M bringing in one of the best recruiting classes I've ever seen, as much as it pains me to say. And then Georgia obviously still bringing in a bunch of talent around the line. And so I don't think they're going to have the same identity as the teams that they've had in the past. But no, they're not going anywhere for long.
And that is unfortunate, but that is the sad truth. I mean, Alabama is going to be there for quite a while. So,
Yeah, listen. I mean, Nick Saban, he can tell any recruit that any single one of his recruiting classes since 07 has won a national championship. If you were recruited by Nick Saban, at one point you have won a national championship.
yeah,
That's insane to think about.
the recruiting pitch to go to Alabama is not that hard. Like, hey, we're in the national championship every year. I'm Nick Saban. I'm one of the greatest. Come play here. Okay.
Yeah, so
let's go win 3 national championships.
My coach at Baylor was the assistant golf coach at Bama for a year, and he got to know Nick Saban. He gave Nick Saban golf lessons, and so when he asked Saban about his recruiting, and Saban said, "Man, I just sit these guys down and I say, look, here's the deal. If you win a national championship, you can come play for me. If you don't want to win a national championship, that's cool. You can go somewhere else. That's fine. We're still going to win a championship here. So if you want to win a championship, you come play for Alabama. It's that simple." And he can do that because his teams back it up. And so that's a pretty easy sell. If I'm a 5-star recruit, I hear that, I'm thinking, I want to play for that man. And so, yeah, they've got it pretty good.
That's incredible. And I will say this, one more thought on Alabama. It's, as a Tennessee fan, obviously, hey, Alabama, but Nick Saban is becoming very likable in the press and in the media. I don't know if y'all have noticed that. Did y'all see the video with him and Bryce Young and Anderson in the press when the 2 kids were getting up? And Saban put his hands on both of them and say, I just want to say this real quick. And just gave them high praise and, thanked them and say, hey, we're not going to be here without these 2 kids. And didn't let them get dragged through the mud. Recruits see that.
Yeah, but
like,
it was definitely Saban fashion to say, well, this game does fall on them.
Yeah,
but
he
couldn't let him get off scot-free. He couldn't let that happen.
But, I mean, you see that as a recruit, you're going to want to go play for a guy like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one more thing about Bama is they're bringing back a ton of talent. It's not just Bryce Young and Will Anderson. It's Dallas Turner, a lot of those pigs on the offensive line. A lot of those younger receivers who honestly did not play very good in the national championship, they're still highly rated recruits at the end of the day, and they're going to be cat daddies before they leave. And Bama, they play without both their corners, both their receivers, and without the right side of their offensive line. And in my opinion, if Bill O'Brien calls a halfway decent game, Bama wins that game. So, I mean, I don't think Bama's going to be going anywhere anytime soon.
It doesn't look like that. And one more thing I'll point out in the game. Can't stand Georgia, but it's really hard to not be happy for Stetson Bennett and his story and everything that kid's been through. JUCO, bouncing around, coming in, 4-string quarterback, worked his way up. Hell, he's like 23 years old. He's been in college forever. And he gives Georgia the first natty in 40-something years. So, I mean, that kid's going to be a legend at Georgia forever. And it's kind of hard not to be happy for the kid, but that's my last thoughts on the game. So let's move on to a very fan favorite segment. Cuds, who the hell are you? Cud, who we got this week? Last week was Kiefer Sykes for the Pacers. Cud, who do you got this week?
All right. This week, I don't even have a player. I have a whole team. This week's Who the Hell Are You is the entire team of the Houston Texans. So, first of all, going back to last Sunday, they're playing the Titans, okay? And it wasn't a washing game. I mean, the Titans, they played everybody that they had because they're playing for the first seed. They're playing for that bye, So I'm thinking, keep in mind, this is the 3-13 Houston Texans. I mean, horrible all year. I mean, Davis Mills, what did he play, 8 games this year?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jesus. I mean, anyways, Davis Mills, 23 for 33, 300 yards, 3 yards, no picks.
He was balling.
Might have to say that again. 0 interceptions for Davis Mills.
Respect that guy, Cud.
Yeah, and then Danny Amendola, who is 36 years old,
As a grandkid.
7 catches, 113 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I mean, and they lost 28-25. You know, and I mean, I don't know if I should be proud of the way they played or shame the Titans for barely beating the worst team in the league. So I don't know how they did it. Maybe they were just cheered up to play the one last game. I don't know, but somehow they played good football.
The first team to ever be inducted into Who the Hell Are You? That's an accomplishment right there.
How about that?
How about that? Congratulations to the Houston Texans. Hey, they played a good game on Sunday.
They did.
And then they decided to fire their coach. But that's neither here nor there. So, all right, so you dive in a little NFL cut, so let's jump into wild card weekend this weekend. Trent, me and you watched a ton of football Saturday and Sunday. That was one of the craziest endings to a NFL season that I think I've ever seen. There was all the talk all week about if the Colts lose to the Jaguars and the Steelers beat the Ravens, all we need is that tie from the Raiders and Chargers. And every time I hear someone talk about it, I was like, okay, guys, y'all are really stirring up some magic here. The Colts are not losing to the pathetic Jacksonville 2-win Jacksonville Jaguars. Colts are red hot. They're going to win this ball game. And even if all that happens, there's no way that game ends in a tie. And sure enough, sitting on the couch, 5 seconds to go, the Colts got blown out by the Jags. Steelers beat the Ravens in overtime. And with 5 seconds to go, the Raiders and Chargers are tied in overtime. And the Raiders went on to go kick the game-winning field goal. So, unreal weekend. Cud, I'll let you jump in here on some NFL thoughts from this weekend. And the big talking point from the Raiders-Chargers was the timeout that Brandon Staley called for the Chargers. I'm convinced, I don't know about y'all, I'm convinced if he doesn't call that timeout, the Chargers and Raiders tie that football game. Because the Raiders looked like they were pretty content to run that clock out. So, Cud, I'll let you jump in here.
Yeah, well, first of all, I might have to steal a little segment from you real quick, Brown. And the Colts are a disgrace.
That was embarrassing.
I mean, how on earth I'm not even a Colts fan, and it's hard to wrap my head around. How do you have Jonathan Taylor, probably the best back in the league, from game 1 to the last one? Well, not the last one; they were bad, but I mean, how do you have? I mean, it blows me away that you have that opportunity to just, hey, go on the road, let's play good. We don't even have to blow them out. We just need to win.
Just got to win.
And they showed up like they practiced soccer all week. I mean, it wasn't even close. The Jaguars blew them out, who haven't hardly got like 10 first downs a game. I mean, man, the Colts, they got to figure something out. I don't know if Carson Wentz is their guy going forward. I know their GM was optimistic talking about him to the press, but I mean, that was just pathetic.
The Colts are terrified.
Carson Wentz to keep or banish.
Yeah, Carson Wentz is a prime keeper banish, and I'm banishing every time.
I banished him, yeah.
The Colts, the Jaguars, to their credit, made the Colts have to throw the ball. They took the run game away from the Colts. And Carson Wentz, who's played pretty good this season, to his credit, and I'm a well-known Carson Wentz hater, he's played well this season. He was terrible on Sunday. The Jaguars made him throw. They took away the run game, and he was awful. Fumbling, taking sacks when he could have thrown it away, throwing picks, turning the ball over. Wentz was really bad, and that might have cost him his job next year, because if you're in the Colts front office, you're pretty pissed, because the Colts turned that thing around really well this year. They were playing really good ball. Heck, they were a Super Bowl sleeper for a lot of people that people were starting to talk. So that was tough to see if you're a Colts fan. They got to be feeling pretty miserable right now, especially in a season where you get 7 teams in the playoffs. And you go out and you get blown out on the road at Jacksonville, the worst team in the league. That's a tough look. And
the thing is,
go ahead, Trent.
If the Colts could have avoided that, if they would have just started Sam Ehlinger.
Honestly, I agree.
If they would have started him the last two
Here
games.
we go.
And I don't even know who Sam Ehlinger is.
Trent,
is that right?
Anybody's better than Carson Wentz.
Trent has a lot of blasphemous Texas takes.
He's coming for that starting job next year. I'm telling you, that kid is he is. Look, what Stetson Bennett just did is great, and he has all kinds of moxie and all kinds of swagger to him. But man, Sam Ehlinger has more moxie and swagger in his pinky than Stetson Bennett does in his whole body. Sam Ehlinger is going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. I'm telling you.
It's going to be for the Indianapolis Colts. They like him in that organization. They do. They got rid of Jacob Eason to let Ehlinger play some ball. I really thought the Colts should have benched Carson Wentz in that game and brought in Ehlinger. I mean, they looked terrible offensively.
First quarter.
They might as well. They had nothing to lose.
They were down by 20 to the Jags. You might as well change something. And
yeah,
they went down with the ship and lost with Carson Wentz. So, but I want to talk about a little bit about this Raiders-Chargers game because that was one of the more insane football games I've ever seen. And first of all, Brandon Staley going for it on his own 16-yard line is something I wouldn't even do playing NCAA 14 on my old PS3. I mean, that is aggressive with the playoffs on the line as well. And then you call the boneheaded timeout when the Raiders are on about the 40. I mean, that made no sense to me. If you tie, you're in the playoffs. It just made no sense. And the Raiders were just running these real slow run plays, kind of into the line between the tackles, just kind of not stretching it out or anything, being real safe. And then he calls that timeout, and the Raiders are like, okay, run a hard run up the middle for 12 yards. We're going to run the clock down to 4 seconds, kick the field goal, and see you later, Chargers. And that sucks because Justin Herbert is unbelievable. That guy's been playing some outstanding ball down the stretch, and he played really well Sunday night and kept them in that game when the Chargers had no business being in that game late. So I'll let y'all jump in and talk a little about some NFL wildcard, talk a little about the Chargers-Raiders game, and thoughts on this crazy weekend.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, Cameron, Brandon Staley, 2 complete boneheaded plays he did. And not only that, did he go for it on the own 20? It wasn't in a situation where he had to do that. Like,
still a close game.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was neck and neck the whole way. He didn't have to go for it. It wasn't like there's 5 minutes left. Hey, we're on the own 20. We need to keep this drive going because I don't think my defense is going to hold up. That was not the scenario whatsoever. So I thought that was pretty poor. Like you said, one of the best games I've ever watched. I mean, every time I thought it was over, 4th and 10 on that last drive to tie it up, I was like, oh, well, here it is, and then they get it. And then next 4 plays, another 4th down and long. I mean, that was a heck of a ball game. And like I don't know if y'all saw that clip at the end of the game where Eckler was talking to that guy for the Raiders where it sounded like, hey, we're all going to knee it. And I think they were. Like, they were just kind of slow playing that drive. And if they don't call that timeout, they kind of say, hey, guys, let's just call it even here.
They'd have ran a little short run play again like they were doing, just let that clock run out. There was no incentive for the Raiders to bust a big play.
No, not at all.
So, but that was one of the more crazy things I've ever seen. I've never seen a scenario like that, and then it almost play out. And could you imagine watching that if you're a Steelers fan? Yeah. That would have been the most painful 4-hour game of my life if I'm a Steelers fan.
Oh, yeah, big time.
So, speaking of the Steelers, Big Ben had his big send-off 2 weeks ago it was Monday Night Football, wasn't it? And it was his last game in Pittsburgh. Everyone's riding off in the sunset, Big Ben. And now here we are, miracle happens in their playoffs. They are playing the Chiefs, and they're about a 2-touchdown underdog. So, Hunter, let me ask you this. Do the Steelers have a chance on Sunday?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
I've said it all week. They've got some magic going. The Steelers have looked bad. I mean, don't get me wrong. They've looked really bad the last couple
they're just
weeks.
Not very good.
But there's something about that playoff magic. They remind me of the Giants in 2011 when they got in at 9-7 with old Michael Strahan and Eli and all those cats, and they end up winning the Super Bowl. I'm not calling a Steelers Super Bowl prediction. I'm just saying, don't count those boys out. They got a really good defense. T.J. Watt is unbelievable. Scared the Chiefs have kind of looked vulnerable at times this year. Keep an eye on the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying, boys. So let's move on to the team everybody wants to talk about. It's the Dallas Cowboys, and they looked really good Saturday night. Beat the snot out of Philadelphia, hung 51 points on them. And Dak looked like the good Dak again. Bounce back game. So, I mean, Dak's got to play really well for Dallas to go deep in the playoffs. He does. He's got to. If Zeke can't get it going, Dak's got to really carry this ball club. So, Dallas is playing the Niners, and in my opinion, it's not a great matchup for Dallas. Niners are going to really be able to run the ball, eat some clock. So, Cud, I'll let you start on Dallas and talk about Dallas Niners, and can Dallas make a run?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think it's going to be an interesting matchup because, I mean, they're playmakers, George Kittle and Debo Samuel, which, in my opinion, whenever I watch the Niners and Debo Samuel play, their plan of attack reminds me a lot of the way the Saints used Taysom Hill before, Drew Brees retired. They could make him run a route. They could put his hand on the ground. He could block and then do a trick play. If you look at the stats at the end of the game, Debo Samuel is getting a ton of jet sweeps, and hell, he's lined up like Cordell Patterson at times. So I think I really like watching him play. He's a kind of a utility guy, but also he could run the deep ball.
He's so good.
And then you got George Kittle going up the seam and blocking too, and so I think they got a good team. But at the end of the day, I think the way we can win this game is get that front seven to shut down the run and make Jimmy G throw the ball.
Make him throw the ball. Make him turn the ball over.
Yeah, I think he's a pretty average passer in the league. And if we can make him throw the ball somehow like 25 to 30 times, we win the game. And we're going to get a pick or a tip fumble or a strip sack. Michael Parsons, one of the best players in the league already, in my opinion.
I agree.
He gets some pressure to him. All of a sudden, I think we could jump out on him 14-0 or something like that and really get that momentum against him. But I think that if somehow we can stop the run and make Jimmy G make plays with his arm, I think that's how we're going to win this game.
Dallas has to take away the Niners' run. They have to take away the Niners' identity. And I agree. They have to make Jimmy G make plays and make throws. Can he do it? I don't know. We'll see. But if Dallas is going to win the game, that's what they're going to have to do. My question to y'all is, as Dallas goes on this run, is do you really trust Mike McCarthy making big in-game decisions to make a big run? Do you trust him with calling an important timeout in this time, making this personnel decision? I mean, do you trust the guy in this situation? Trent, I'll let you jump in. You said no very quickly.
Of course not, because he's an idiot. First, talk about calling timeouts in the right time. Cliff Kingsbury, Coach Bro, 2 weeks ago made him call 2 critical timeouts.
He did.
I mean, he outcoached him.
Big time.
Big time. I mean, this is so embarrassing. I can't stand Mike McCarthy. We have got to get him fired as soon as we can. Right. I don't care if that means going 0-16 next year, because guess what? The reason I say this is because Dallas actually has a good team.
They do.
Like a team that if you had a decent head coach, you could go do something with, man. I'd have a little bit more faith in them making a run. I mean, maybe promote Kellen Moore to the head coach. I mean, I love Kellen Moore, but dude, Mike McCarthy is just going to do. He will single-handedly, if we lose to the Niners, it will be because of Mike McCarthy.
100%.
Not because something happened on the field due to the players, because something happened on the sideline.
Put it all on McCarthy's shoulder.
Huh?
Put it all on McCarthy's shoulders then.
Yeah.
I do think Kellen Moore's coaching waiting. And if Dallas gets bounced in this first round, Kellen Moore's going to be a hot commodity for a head coach in the league. And Dallas may want to jump at that opportunity and say, hey, look, Mike, it's not working out. We're going to go with Kellen here, who's really revamped this offense in Dallas. That's going to be interesting. I'm going to go out on a limb. Y'all are going to hate me for this. I think the Niners are going to win that football game. I think the Niners are really stout. They're a pretty solid little club. As long as Jimmy G doesn't turn the football over. As long as he doesn't turn it over. If Dallas goes out and makes Jimmy G throw it 45 times, Niners have no chance. If they get Debo running those jet sweeps like you're talking about, Cud, get him involved in that offense like they did against the Rams Sunday. They were a whole nother team that second half, and Debo was dominant. And you know why the Niners are going to win this football game? Because they got a guy named Jawan Jennings on their football team, the most slept-on wide receiver in the NFL, caught 2 touchdowns on Sunday, carried the Niners to the playoffs. He went to, I don't know where he went to college. I couldn't tell you that. But that guy, he's been balling the last couple weeks. Keep an eye on Jawan Jennings for the Niners.
Well, Hunter, you go ahead.
Well, I just kind of want to zag a little bit here. We're talking about how the Cowboys' key is on the defensive side of the ball. And, we touched on it last week. I think they're extremely predictable on defense. We're going to give up a bunch of yards. We're going to give up some crappy touchdowns on some drives that we look like the Cowboys of 5 years ago. But we're also going to generate turnovers. And so I think that's a given. I don't think there's any variable there. But the unpredictable part is the offense. And so if the Cowboys can establish a run on first down and get into some 2nd and 4s, some 2nd and 6s, to where it's not all on Dak's shoulders, then I think we'll be able to establish some drives, control the possession game to keep San Francisco's offense off the field, so our defense won't give up the 25 to 30 points because they won't have time to do that. Because we're gonna get a turnover or two, so that's going to take one or two drives away from San Francisco. So if we can just, I don't want to say milk the clock, but just establish the run game, get a couple nice long drives early on in the game and kind of set the tone, I think that's going to be the key. And that's something that's been extremely unpredictable, so I think that's the key for Dallas this week.
That's a good point, Hunter, and that's a really good point. What Dallas offense are you going to get? You going to get the one that was against the Cardinals last week and looked awful? You're going to get the one that put up 51 points in primetime against Philadelphia Saturday night. That offense looked really good. Dak was slinging it around. They got the receivers involved. Run game was pretty good. What offense is going to show up? And that's a good point. So, Trent, cut any thoughts? Any last thoughts on Dallas?
Well, yeah. So going back to Mike McCarthy, I disagree with Trent. I think he's a good. He's a good coach.
I don't know.
He's a good coach, but he makes bonehead
multiple
game time decisions.
That makes a bad coach.
Exactly.
No. But overall, I think he's a good coach. He's good for the locker room. He's got the resume, in Green Bay. Granted, he had Aaron Rodgers and all that, but
that helps.
But I still think he's a good coach. But at the same time, if we get bounced early, I think we actually really need to pay attention to Kellen Moore because, think about this big change in the league where everyone's trying to find this new and up and coming 30-year-old coach to be there for the next 20 years. That's been a real big trend in the league. So I do think I don't mind McCarthy. Yes, he makes some bad, clock management decisions. But and also my second point, you picked the Niners, Brown. Dallas already won.
I'm telling you, the Niners. That's not a great matchup for Dallas. I like the Niners on Sunday, especially with Dallas's lack of playoff success in my lifetime. It hasn't been great, and I hate that because I really like Dak and I like the Cowboys, but. Something's telling me Niners on Sunday.
This is a wild card game. Listen, we're fine in the wild card games. The divisional rounds when we suck.
They're just done next week.
Yeah, here's what I think. If Trayvon Diggs can get a pick, Dallas wins the game.
I'd like to see some stats on when Trayvon Diggs does get a pick. What's Dallas's win-loss record? I bet it's really good. I bet it's close to undefeated. Because what does he have this year? 12, and he's got 2 in some of those games.
I believe he's at 11 right now.
11. I'd like to see those stats. That's a good point, Trent. Hunter, I'll let you jump in.
I just wanted to say one quick thing on McCarthy. I think Trent may have been a little too harsh on him, and I've been hard on McCarthy since the day we fired him. The day we fired him, I texted you, Cameron. I said that is a terrible hire, and so I've been hard on him. But he's not so bad to where you can't win with him. You can win with him, but you're never going to win because of him, if that makes sense. And so. I think to Cud's point, we're sitting on a guy in Kellen Moore who actually could be a coach that you're going to win because of. And so if we do get bounced and teams start sniffing around Kellen Moore, I think it's worth it to promote him to head coach, kick Mike to the curb, because I think that could lock up a guy that he could lead the Cowboys to being relevant for years to come. He could be the next great NFL head coach that we're sitting on him right now, so I don't think we should miss that opportunity.
You do not want that guy walking out of your franchise. You do not want him walking out the door. He could be.
I'm not going to lose any sleep if McCarthy leaves.
Well, the thing you got the Rams with McVay, Kingsbury with the Cardinals. Everyone's trying to find that, like either Cut or Trent said, that new up and coming young guy, and Dallas has that guy in their franchise. And let me tell you, there's going to be a lot of teams calling about him this offseason.
Yeah, the only thing he's missing is a 5 o'clock shadow, but other than that, he can coach.
That is true. And Mike McCarthy, he's a Super Bowl champion. He knows how to get a team together. He knows how to get that mesh together. He may not be the greatest X and O guy, and he's awful in-game managing coach. So many poor decisions. But the guy can rally a locker room and rally a ball club together, and that's his big advantage. So. But let's do one more NFL thought, then we got to move on. So last week, I don't remember what Cud's prediction was, but all of us were pretty Packers-Chiefs Super Bowl. That's where we're headed. So any changes before we go into the playoffs this weekend?
Yes, big change. Chiefs lose first round because they're terrible. Listen,
wow.
Watching that game that they played against Denver
I
wanted to scrub my eyes with acid.
It was bad.
That was so bad. That was literally one of the worst games I've ever watched. Because the thing is if you take the game in itself and you don't know anything about the two teams, maybe you're like, oh, it's not that bad of a game. But if you know how good the Chiefs' offense is and how bad they played, that sucked.
Okay, Trent.
And like you were saying, Cameron, I like what you were on about. Man, Big Ben and that Magic down there in Pittsburgh, they're coming for him.
They got something cooking over there in Pittsburgh,
They're
Sansom.
At first, I was thinking take the Steelers in the points. I'm saying take Steelers money line.
Ooh, hey, don't be discouraging our listeners, Sansom. They could lose it. We don't want to get our listeners killed on some miracle wagers here.
That's stupid of me. Don't do that.
Okay, let me ask you this, Trent. So if the Chiefs made you rub acid in your eyes Saturday night, what did the Jets make you do when we watched it Sunday afternoon?
Oh no, Carson Wentz single-handedly. I probably shouldn't say that, but it was bad. So bad because they have such a good team. It's the same thing as the Chiefs. They have such a good team, and then Carson Wentz single-handedly lost in that game. He can't throw the ball.
He derailed their season single-handedly.
Yeah, and he didn't have any type of watching him walk around after terrible play after terrible play after terrible play, not getting his guys up, not saying, "Hey guys, that's on me," not giving any type of rallying cry or going up and talking to his guys. Terrible leadership. I'm telling you. Sam E starting next year.
You know who would have done that, Trent? Sam Ehlinger. He'd have rallied that ball club.
Would have won by 4 touchdowns.
So, all right, Trent. So, if Chiefs were out, who's making the AFC? Who's making it out of the AFC?
I think the Bills.
That's a solid prediction.
Because if the Titans get beat, which I do like the Titans a lot too, but
I do too.
The Titans get beat early. All of a sudden, the Bills. Everything goes through Buffalo.
Yep.
And I think it's going to be a hard place to play.
The Titans get home field except for Bills.
Exactly. And the thing is, I don't know if the Titans win that divisional game, whoever they play.
The
I
Bills
think they could lose.
Game to watch this weekend, Bills-Patriots. It's going to be 1 degree in that football game. 1 degree. That is going to be must-watch television between the Bills and the Pats. So, let's move on from a little NFL talk. Let's get to our weekly top 5. And this week's top 5, I could have 725 listed. Top 5 worst sports days of your life. And not in like our athletic experience as a sports fan. So, Hunter, your list is going to be pretty good. I'll let you start the show. Top 5 worst sports days of your life. Go ahead.
All right, so this was much more difficult to come up with than I thought it would be, and not because I had so many, but because I have so few. And I think it's because my teams have always been so bad that they're never really in a position to break my heart.
You're telling
me. You know
me.
what I mean? So, all right, so buckle up. Number 5 is my junior year of college. Baylor football hosting Oklahoma. College game day. We're number 2 in the country. And Seth Russell broke his ankle the week before, so we got Jarrett Stidham in there, and we just get blown out.
I forgot about that.
And I was hurt. That was a rough weekend for me. And of course, then Stidham broke his ankle. Chris Johnson got hurt, so we had Lynx Hawthorne playing Texas by the end of the season. So that was just a bad deal. And then it came out to our brows as a scumbag. So that whole season just fell apart. So that was a bad deal. Number 4 for me, 2016 Masters. Jordan Spieth makes a turn with a 5-shot lead. Bogey's number 11, hits it in the water twice. On number 12, it makes a quad, and Danny freaking Willett wins the Masters, then keeps Jordan Spieth from repeating. It's unbelievable that Jordan Spieth only has 1 green jacket.
That is crazy. And how long ago that was is even crazier. Yeah. I just want to put this, that 903 Sports as a pod would like for the PGA Tour to strip Danny Willett of his green jacket. Do not let him in the Champions Dinner. That Masters never happened. Masters.
That's going to be up to the Masters. The PGA. We don't even have to go as high as the PGA Tour. We just need to go to the Masters, Augusta National Golf Club.
Strip him of that green jacket.
All right, number 3, the Dez catch. Nothing more needs to be said about that. Number 2, this is kind of a long story for me. So it's 2016 baseball season. It's the Texas Rangers finished as the 1 seed in the American League. This is the year. Guys. We got Beltre kind of late in his career. Elvis is playing amazing. One of the shortstops in Major League Baseball. This is the year that we do it. Okay, so I'm super hype, and this is actually game 1. Kind of weird. Game 1 was the worst day for me. I went to practice early that day, and I watched the game at our practice facility by myself the whole game, and we lose like 10-2. I don't remember the score. We just got blown out. And I drove home that day, and I almost quit sports. I thought I watched probably half the games. I probably watched 80-something games that year. Put in so much time just to see them get blown out in the first game of the postseason. I thought, this isn't worth it. It's not worth feeling the way that I feel right now. And so that was a low moment for me as a sports fan. And then if this isn't number one on everybody's list, then you can just get off the podcast. Number one, Game 6, 2011 World Series. Worst moment of my life. It's not even close. It's not even close.
Worst day ever. Trent,
It's not the podcast.
what'd you say, Trent?
Yeah, get out of here, Trent.
Yeah,
It was just. I'm gonna stop talking about it, or I won't be able to shut up.
that was one of the worst days ever. That is, I would assume on all of our lists except for Trent. Trent, I'm gonna let you go next. I'm just gonna take a guess, just a modest wager here, and say 1 through 5 is all Texas football stories.
We got plenty to choose from.
Honestly, it's best in the last 12 years. I was going to say, I guess blessed is not the right word for this, but man, the last 12 years, I could pick a lot of games.
You could.
But Hunter's hit on a couple of them already. So my fifth one was the Dez catch.
That
He
was
caught it.
bad.
Still to this day, have no
He caught
idea. That's if that game's played anywhere else other than Lambeau, that's a catch.
One of the worst.
It was a
calls
catch in
ever.
Lambeau. They just didn't call it one. It's a catch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember I was listening to it on the radio because, of course, I don't have TV, and so I remember hearing about it, and I was, of course, being just a Cowboy fan, being biased, I was listening to Babe and who's the other Cowboy announcer they have,
Babe
the radio guy,
and Brad Sham. Great,
And Brad
great
Sham,
crew.
the coach.
Great crew.
and so of course they were painting me a picture, and I didn't realize how bad it was until I saw the highlights the next day, and oh my gosh, I came unglued again the next day.
Yeah, that's one
So
of the
that's
worst
my number
calls I've ever
5.
seen.
My number 4 is Cud can correct me if I'm wrong here, because of course I'm a big fan of all these other sports teams, but nowhere near like I am a Longhorn fan. But I think it was 2013 when Ray Allen hit that 3
Yeah.
Yep.
in the corner
Yep.
against the Spurs. I mean, if that never
2013.
happens, the Spurs win a championship. But who's to say they go and win the next year?
That's true.
So it could have lit a fire underneath them. Okay, number 3 and 2 happened on the same day this year. So number 3 is when Aggie beat Alabama.
Oh,
And there's a lot of reasons for that. One, I cannot A&M. I hate A&M with all of my heart. There's no team, even OU. I hate A&M more than OU. But what happened was, here, let me tell you my second worst moment is when Texas blew a 21-point lead to OU. Both of those happened on the same day.
bad day for you, Bob.
Yeah. So after my second worst beat, I was thinking, well, at least I have Bama Pillage coming tonight. They're going to go out and beat A&M by 5 touchdowns. And I had a hefty sum of money on that game, too. So not only did my Longhorns, literally their season died there. They blew a 21-point lead against their biggest rivals. Then Bama gets pillaged by Aggie, and then I lose a hefty sum of money. So all around terrible day. And then number 1, Cameron, this honestly should be on your list because this is what started the Bama dynasty. When Colt McCoy got hurt in the 2009-2010 season against Bama in the national championship game, we were about to blow the doors off them.
Yeah,
And then he goes down. We had
Yeah.
all the momentum, already kicked 2 field goals, just got an onside kick. And then he goes out and gets his shoulder blown up.
You're right, Trent. You're
as
right.
a non-biased
Texas would've won that
citizen, I agree. Texas wins that football game.
And then, listen, Texas program goes,
Has not
To the
recovered.
and Alabama takes off.
Yep.
The roles would have been reversed had Colt McCoy not gotten hurt. Texas would have 7 national championships,
Yep.
and Bama would have 0.
Hell, Cud might have gone to Texas. Cud might have been a Longhorn if that happened.
Been a long
Yeah,
one.
let's just.
What a world that would be.
Yeah. Colt McCoy should have lifted more weights. He was weak.
That Bama
Cheap
was too
shot.
tough for him. All right,
That's
Cud.
a-
Your top 5. I already know what your 1A and 1B are, but go ahead. Top
Okay.
5.
Kind of like last week, all 5 of these days my spirits were pretty low. So, I mean, they're all pretty tough. So, really not any order. So, for number 5, I'll go from 5 to 1 here. This year's Natty was pretty tough because it was an interesting year being a fan because we overcame a lot of stuff, like we were talking about earlier, players and coaches leaving and some injuries. It was pretty cool that we even just got in that game. But so 5 was this year's Natty. 4 was in 2016 when Deshaun Watson beat us just barely. That was an absolute war of a game. And then also number 4 is when Trevor Lawrence in 2018 beat the brakes off of us. That was pretty tough. I mean, we lost 44-16 that game. I mean, it wasn't even a ball game.
Beat down.
Yeah. So number 3, like Trent was saying, 2016, Dez, to this minute, this second, this hour, he caught that ball. So number 2, Trent also said this, Ray Allen put me 6 feet under that day. Coach Pop, worst, love him to death, but
Worst
keeps him
decision
dunking
ever.
in the game. We get that offensive rebound. And before that even happened, make the free throw, Kawhi. Come on, man. So, God.
Greatest player ever, Tim
man,
Duncan's on the bench at the end of the game. Come
I
on,
know,
Pop.
the season on the line. So, that's number 2. And number 1, Nelson Cruz dropping that fly out in right field.
Hey, don't blame it just on Nelson Cruz. That's Neftali Feliz, too.
Oh, yeah, you're right. And then after that, of course, I don't like to speak his name, that home run that put us down. David Fritz, the GOAT.
We don't speak his name on this pod, Trenton.
What do we do? Bring in Mark Lowe in the 11th inning? What do we think was going to happen? Might as well put me in the pitch. My goodness.
No kidding.
That's awful.
So
Just awful.
That's my 5 days of being about as down as you can.
I'm still down about 2011. That
is the
hadn't gotten any better.
Just the worst
No.
sports day of all time. All right, gentlemen, I have my 5. Like I said, I could probably make about 700. There, you could find very few sports fans as just miserable as Brownie is. But let's roll through it. Hunter, I'm surprised this is not on your list. Number 5, USA World Cup against Belgium. We lost 2-1
Yeah,
extra time.
I wasn't big into soccer then. I've gotten
That's when
big
I was
into it
just
now,
getting
but
into it. I'm still not over it 6 years later. Chris Wondolowski, if you ever listen to this pod, we do not like you here. Wide open goal to send us through the World Cup.
Okay, Bob.
To send us
It
not
wasn't
to the World Cup,
that
to the
wide
next.
open. He should have scored.
Cud could make that after 15 Coors Lights, right in the back of the net.
Over.
He had a wide open shot into the net, completely whiffs. Tim Howard, the greatest, I'm not a huge soccer guy, but the greatest performance I've ever seen to date. How many saves did he have? 15?
14,
He
I
had a
think.
ridiculous amount of saves.
Yeah, it was remarkable.
Sets up for us perfect in the 89th minute. Wando, wide open goal, muffs it. Terrible day. So that's number 5. Number 4 is when Tennessee football died in 2017 after a really good 2016 season. We're building on something. 2017, Florida throws a 65-yard Hail Mary bomb. At the end, it was tied. We're going to overtime. It's okay, Florida, we're a ranked team. Those a 65-yard Hail Mary. We're not even in prevent defense. Butch Jones, you're a moron. Nice call.
Wasn't that the tip one? Like the double tip? Was it that game?
That was when I can't remember who it was.
That was Georgia. That's Auburn versus Georgia.
Yeah, that's Auburn, Georgia. Florida was the one with the Felipe Franks threw it to that Cleveland kid against Tennessee.
Yeah, that's
wide
right.
open, got by everybody and scored. I ripped my Tennessee T-shirt in half after that one. That was a tough day. Number 3 is 2015 Jose Bautista home run against the Rangers. That was gruesome. Rangers are up 2-0 on the road in Toronto. All we got to do is win one game at home. We lose both games at home, and then Bautista hits that bomb off a bum Sam Dyson.
Was that the bat flip?
That was the bat flip. That's where the bat flip was born.
I
Awful.
need to take that video and put it in my room above my bed.
They need to scrub
That's right,
that
you don't have a
video.
TV to play it on.
Yeah, there you go. You wouldn't be able to watch it, Trent.
I got a
Good,
couple screens.
good
just out
point.
to
Good
you
point there, Hunter. Number 2, I was still pretty young, but New York Jets, AFC Championship against the Steelers. We were the better team. We were asleep for 3 quarters. Came alive, but it was too little too late. That Jets team, one of the best defenses I've ever seen to date. Darrelle Revis, Antonio Cromartie, Bart Scott. I mean, great club. Ripped my heart out because the Jets have not been back to the playoffs since the longest streak in the NFL, and that was 10 years ago. And then number 1, obviously, I mean, we all have it except for Trent, the Astro man, is 2011 World Series. Nelson Cruz, catch the ball, man. We're World Series champs. Catch the ball.
So I got a quick story about that day. So I think it was my junior year of high school. I think anyway, a buddy of mine, Luke, he and I were texting back and forth the whole game, and after he who shall not be named hit the triple, and we go into the 10th inning, I texted him. I said, "Hey, Josh Hamilton's about to hit a home run. He's about to hit a home run." Sure enough, hits a bomb, and I texted him. I said, "Oh my gosh, he did it."
In that game.
What's that?
That's a forgotten great moment from that game.
Yep,
When we
absolutely.
took the lead big in extras.
Two-run bomb.
Yep.
So I never hear back from my buddy Luke. I'm like, hey, what the heck's going on? He texted me about an hour and a half after the game and said, hey, man, sorry, I had to go find my dad. I said, what do you mean, find your dad? And he said, well, after he who shall not be named hit the triple, his dad just left the house and just started walking around the neighborhood. He quit. He gave up on the rags. And so, so he didn't see the home run or Berkman come in and tie it, or he who shall not be named hit the walk-off home run. He didn't see any of that because he was just wandering the neighborhood aimlessly in anger.
I don't blame
And that's about how I've felt ever since.
Yeah, that's a good point, Hunter. I forget about that. That Hamilton homer's a big forgotten moment in that game.
Yeah.
And then overshadowed by
Yeah, because we were one strike away in back-to-back innings. It's not just the ninth. We also did the same thing in the 10th.
Yep.
Yeah.
But dadgum Darren Oliver screwed us in the 10th.
Y'all been wandering the baseball desert like the children of Israel.
Same
Yeah.
amount of World
We'll
Series
be in
championships as the
years.
Astros.
Go find a
man.
trash can, bum.
Yeah, same amount of World Series as the trash
I'm the only
bros.
man sitting here with a championship.
Nope.
Yeah.
Astros never won one. All right,
Nope.
man, we got to move on. We're getting pretty late in the pod here, so I want to jump into my Brownies rant. Last week it was the Vols. I have a feeling it's going to be the Vols quite a bit on some of these rants, but I'm going to go another route. I'm going to go with Brian Flores fired from Miami Dolphins. I'm not a Dolphins fan. They're in my division, so as a Jets fan, hell, I'm thrilled. Great coach, out of my division. But Dolphins, what are you doing? Brian Flores just got done with year 3. He took over a horrible Dolphins team in year 1. That was supposed to be the worst team in the league. They won 5 games. They went 5-11, and they were a competitive little club. They were playing hard for their coach. That year, I knew. I said, this guy knows what he's doing. That he rallied that really bad ball club. Last year, they went 10-6. That was Tua's rookie year. Unfortunately, bad luck, missed the playoffs at 10-6. That's hard to do in the NFL. And then this year, they started out 1-7. You're like, whoa, what's wrong with the Dolphins? Finished strong, go 9-8. Tua was hurt. Their supposed to be star QB was hurt half the season. It was their first win. It was their first back-to-back winning seasons since 2003, 2004. Flores was building something over there. It's hard to do. It takes time. Ownership has got to realize, hey, we're the Dolphins. We're not the Patriots. I mean, when's the last time the Dolphins won a Super Bowl? 70s? If they even have one? I mean, what are we doing here? Flores, I'm not saying Flores was going to be the next Vince Lombardi, but the guy was building something over there. And if I'm a Dolphins player and those guys he seemed to have that locker room pretty together, they've got to be pretty upset over there because you got to go through a whole new coaching change. And they finished the season red hot. They won 8 of the last 9 ball games. It's not like they were 9-1 and lost their last 8. It was a disaster. Of all the coaching hires, I thought that just made no sense to me. It was random. If you want to put him on the hot seat next year because he hadn't made the playoffs in 3 years, you got to give the guy another year. He's trying to build with Tua. Tua's got to stay on the field. A lot of things went into that. I just thought that was really sorry move by the Dolphins. Now you're starting over, and you're not a historically great franchise anyway. It's not like you hired Flores to win a Super Bowl in year 2 or 3. I mean, it takes time. It's hard to do. It's hard to win in the NFL. So I don't know. That kind of upset me. I thought I like Brian Flores. Seems like a pretty stand-up guy. He's had some success in the league. I would be stunned if he didn't get hired in this next coaching cycle. If I'm the Bears or the Vikings or one of those teams, I'm calling Brian Flores pretty quickly. So
would you want him to coach the Jets?
No, we got the best coach in the league, Robert Saleh, right now. He's going to turn this thing around. I trust my guy Saleh.
I'm still waiting for that.
If Saleh don't work out, we'll give Flores a call. We'll give him a try. But that's my thoughts on the matter. That's Brownie's rant. So, men, any last second thoughts before we wrap up? Episode 2 of the return of 903 Sports.
I think you hit the whole story of Brian Flores on the head. I thought it was a terrible fire too, and not only that, if you look at all the coaches that just got fired in the past 2 weeks, all those guys were absolutely terrible teams.
They had awful teams, and they were on the down. I've never seen a coach get fired for winning 8 of his last 9 games. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty piss poor for the Dolphins.
Yeah, that's just. And you know why these bad teams stay bad? Because they have so much turnover. Look at the Jets. Look at the Lions. New QB every 3 years. New coach every 2 years. You can't win like that. There's just no way to win like that.
Speaking of the Lions, Dan Campbell, you're next, son.
Yeah, that's very possible, Sansom. So,
Listen, I like Dan Campbell as much as the next guy, but if he does not need to be coaching the NFL football team ever.
The Lions were a fun team this year, Trent. You give them another year.
No.
Yeah, I like Dan Campbell.
I do too. I think he
You're
could
gonna
be
have-
okay.
that's one thing.
No, it's
That's
not
the first
that.
strike against him.
Well, all right, everybody. Well, thanks for listening to another episode of 903 Sports. It's been fun as always. We're going to try to knock these things out weekly for y'all to listen. So if anyone has any thoughts on the pod or any ideas or wants to jump on, just shoot us a tweet, DM us. And thank you for listening. That's all we got, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for tuning in. That's all.